On the night of July 1st, 2025, a telescope in the Chilean desert caught a single point of light moving in a way nothing in our solar system is supposed to move. It wasn't orbiting the sun, it was passing through on a path that started somewhere else entirely, outside our solar system, outside anything we've ever mapped. Astronomers would eventually name it 3I Atlas. The I stands for interstellar. It is only the third object of its kind ever confirmed in human history. That alone should have been enough of a story. But in the weeks that followed, a different claim began spreading. One far stranger than an interstellar visitor passed through. The claim was this: something else had arrived. Something bigger, 100 times bigger than 3I Atlas itself. And according to the videos, articles, and forum posts repeating it, this new object wasn't just passing by. It was heading straight for 3I Atlas. Two objects. One from outside our solar system, one supposedly even larger, converging on the same patch of sky. If true, it would be one of the strangest coincidences in the history of astronomy. So we're going to ask the question properly. What do we actually know about 3I Atlas? Where did the 100x bigger object claim come from? And is there any real observation behind it? Or is something else going on? Let's start with what's solid. 3I Atlas was discovered by the Atlas Survey, the asteroid terrestrial impact last alert system, a network of telescopes built specifically to scan the sky night after night for anything moving that shouldn't be. It's the same system that has caught thousands of asteroids over the years. On this particular night, the software flagged an object with an orbit so extreme, so clearly not bound to the sun, that follow-up observations began almost immediately. Within days, observatories around the world had confirmed it. This was not a comet looping back from the outer solar system. Its trajectory was hyperbolic, meaning it came from interstellar space, swung past the sun once, and will leave again, never to return. Only two other objects like it have ever been recorded: Oumuamua in 2017 and Comet Borisov in 2019. 3I Atlas is the third confirmed member of that extremely short list. That's the credibility anchor, a real object discovered by a real survey, confirmed by observatories across multiple continents. Everything from this point forward has to be measured against that baseline. Now, the harder question, what is 3I Atlas physically? Here's where it gets interesting and where a lot of the online speculation gets its foothold. Early observations showed 3I Atlas behaving like an active comet, releasing gas and dust as sunlight warmed its surface, the same way any comet in our own solar system would. Instruments, including the James Webb Space Telescope, studied its coma, the cloud of gas surrounding the nucleus, and found it rich in carbon dioxide, more so than typical solar system comets. That's a real measured detail. It doesn't mean the object is artificial. It means this particular chunk of ice and rock formed somewhere with a different chemical recipe than the comets we're used to. Which makes sense, because it wasn't formed here. Estimating its actual size has proven difficult, and that difficulty matters for the story we're investigating. Unlike a planet or a large asteroid, an active comet is wrapped in its own haze of dust and gas, which makes the solid nucleus underneath hard to measure precisely. Astronomers have published a range of size estimates for 3I Atlas's nucleus, and those estimates have shifted as more data came in. That's normal science. It is also, unfortunately, fertile ground for exaggeration. Because somewhere in that gap, between we don't have a precise number yet, and here's the exact size, a very different kind of story took root. Think about how you'd explain this to someone unfamiliar with astronomy. Imagine trying to weigh a snowball from 100 yards away at night while it's slowly evaporating. You can measure how bright it is. You can measure how it moves. But turning that into a firm size takes careful modeling, and early numbers almost always get revised. Now imagine someone takes that early, uncertain number and later claims a new object was found that's 100 times bigger. That's the shape of the claim we're chasing. So where did it actually come from? Searching for the origin of a 100x bigger object targeting 3I Atlas doesn't lead to a research paper. It doesn't lead to a NASA press release, an ESA bulletin, or a peer-reviewed study. It leads to a wave of videos uploaded within days of each other in the months after 3I Atlas's discovery, all using nearly identical language. A colossal object, 100 times larger, arriving without warning, locking onto the interstellar visitor. The phrasing repeats so closely across unrelated channels that it reads less like independent discovery and more like a script being reused, a template built for clicks, wrapped around a real astronomical event to borrow its credibility. That doesn't mean the underlying event, 3I Atlas itself, is fake. It means the added claim, and the second larger object, doesn't trace back to an observatory, a survey, or a scientist. It traces back to content designed to spread. That's an important distinction, and it's worth sitting with, because this is where a lot of viewers get pulled in two directions at once. On one side, a real, confirmed, genuinely rare event, an interstellar object passing through our solar system for only the third time ever recorded. On the other, a much bigger, much more dramatic claim stacked on top of it, one with no visible source. Let's take a moment to restate where we actually stand. 3I's Atlas. Real, confirmed, tracked by multiple observatories, behaving broadly like an active comet with an unusual chemical signature. The 100 times larger object supposedly converging on it, unsupported by any institution, survey, or published data we could locate. Two very different claim statuses, sitting side by side in the same story. So if there's no second object, why does 3I Atlas keep generating this kind of speculation in the first place? Part of the answer is timing. 3I Atlas made its closest approach to the Sun in the fall of 2025, and interest peaked right as it became a difficult, faint target, visible mainly to large telescopes, not to the public. That combination is almost perfect for speculation. A real, unusual object that most people can't verify with their own eyes, arriving at a moment when public curiosity about interstellar visitors was already running high thanks to Oumuamua's famously strange, elongated shape back in 2017. Oumuamua is worth pausing on because it's the reason interstellar object, and maybe it's not natural, got linked together in the public imagination at all. Its shape was unusual enough, and its brightness changed in a strange enough pattern that a small number of scientists, including Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb, proposed it was worth seriously asking whether it could be artificial. Most astronomers examined the same data and concluded it was very likely a natural object, just an unusual one, possibly a fragment, shaped by tidal forces from its home star. But the question had been asked publicly by a credentialed scientist, and it never fully went away. When 3I Atlas arrived, that same question resurfaced, and this time it came with an added layer of real scientific attention. Loeb and others published papers examining 3I Atlas's characteristics, in some cases flagging anomalies they argued deserved closer study, not proof of anything artificial, but open questions raised through the normal, if unusually public, process of scientific debate. That's an important detail on its own. The debate around 3I Atlas isn't happening in secret, and it isn't being suppressed. It's happening in public, in published papers, with named authors putting their reputations behind specific, checkable claims. That's a very different thing from an anonymous video asserting a second object without naming a single source. Separately, radio astronomers pointed the FAST telescope, one of the most sensitive radio dishes on Earth, directly at 3I Atlas, searching for any periodic signal that might resemble an artificial transmission. This wasn't a symbolic gesture. FAST is capable of detecting extraordinarily faint signals, the kind that would be far too weak for smaller instruments to notice. The result of that, search. No credible signal was detected. Silence, at the sensitivity they were capable of measuring. If 3I Atlas, or anything near it, were broadcasting anything resembling a technological signal within FAST's detection range, this is the kind of search that would have caught it. That's the real shape of the is it natural question. Scientists asked it seriously using real instruments, and so far the answer keeps coming back the same way it did for Oumuamua and for Borisov before it. Unusual, but not unexplainable by natural processes. No confirmed technosignature. No confirmed artificial structure. No confirmed second object. Here's the midpoint question worth holding on to. If the actual science on 3I Atlas is this restrained, actual telescopes, actual papers, actual negative results, why does the online version sound so much bigger? Because restraint doesn't spread the way certainty does. We found no signal is an honest sentence. It is not a viral one. A claim needs a shape, an arrival, a target, a countdown. 100 times larger object is targeting the interstellar visitor, has all three. It borrows the real credibility of 3I Atlas, a genuine, rare, scientifically significant event, and grafts an invented escalation onto it, because escalation is what keeps a viewer watching to the end of a video. This is worth understanding as a pattern, not just a one-off. Rare astronomical events are, almost by definition, exactly the kind of story that resists easy public verification. Most people will never look through a telescope capable of resolving 3I Atlas. They rely on secondhand reporting. That gap between something genuinely extraordinary happened and most people can't check it themselves is exactly where exaggerated claims take root, because there's no immediate visible contradiction to stop them. So let's deepen the picture a little further, because 3I Atlas deserves to be understood on its own terms, without needing a fictional companion object to feel significant. Interstellar objects are, in a very real sense, messages, just not the kind Hollywood usually imagines. Every planetary system that forms around a star ejects material during its formation, flinging leftover ice and rock out into the galaxy. Galaxy. Over billions of years, the galaxy fills with this debris, drifting between stars. Occasionally, one of those fragments drifts close enough to our sun that its path bends, and for a brief window, it becomes visible from Earth. Its Atlas, is one of those fragments. A piece of another solar system, formed around a star we've likely never identified, that happened to cross paths with ours. That is the actual scale of what happened here. Not a second object arriving to intercept it. A single ancient traveler, shaped by physics and chemistry we're only now able to study directly, because for a few months it's close enough to see. Given that, what would it take for the viral claim to be true? For a 100 times larger object to be genuinely converging on 3I Atlas? It would need to be bright enough, and on a trajectory unusual enough, that it would be immediately obvious to EV, every survey telescope currently watching that part of the sky. Not just Atlas, but the dozens of other observatories, amateur and professional, that track near-Earth space every night. An object 100 times the size of an already notable interstellar visitor would not be a quiet discovery. It would be the biggest astronomy story of the decade, reported simultaneously by every major space agency on Earth. That kind of universal, immediate confirmation is precisely what's missing here. That absence is itself informative. It's not proof that nothing unusual could ever happen near 3I Atlas. It's evidence that, as of now, no credible observatory has reported the specific event being described, a second, far larger object on a converging path. It's worth being precise about what kind of claim this actually is, rather than lumping it in with a genuine scientific debate around 3I Atlas's chemistry. Established, 3I Atlas exists, is interstellar in origin, and is the third such object ever confirmed. Strongly supported, it behaves largely like an active comet, releasing gas and dust as it warms, with a coma chemistry that differs from typical solar system comets. Disputed, in the ordinary scientific sense, a small number of researchers have raised open questions about specific anomalies, questions the wider astronomical community is still working through. Unsupported, as far as any public record shows, the existence of a second, 100 times larger object converging on it. Those four categories aren't equally uncertain, and treating them as if they were is exactly how a real discovery gets flattened into an unfounded one. So here is where the two threads finally meet. On one side, a real, rare, scientifically significant interstellar object, discovered through legitimate survey work, studied with some of the most advanced instruments on the planet, showing genuine chemical peculiarities that scientists are still working to fully explain. On the other, a claim about a companion object that traces back not to a telescope, but to a wave of near-identical videos with no cited source. A story built to escalate a real event into something it currently isn't. The honest version of this story doesn't need the second object. 3I Atlas, on its own, is already one of only 3 confirmed visitors from beyond our solar system in recorded history. It carries chemistry from a star system none of us will ever see up close. It passed within reach of our instruments for a matter of months, and then it will leave, following a path that will never bring it back. Scientists pointed some of Earth's most sensitive instruments at it, asked seriously whether it could be artificial, and came away with an answer rooted in evidence rather than assumption. Unusual, but explainable, at least so far, by the same natural processes that shape every other wandering fragment of ice and rock in the galaxy. That's not a smaller story than the viral version. It's a truer one. 100 times larger shadow chasing it through the dark makes for a dramatic thumbnail. But the actual object, ancient, alone, passing through a solar system that isn't its own, watched by instruments built by a species it will never know existed, doesn't need an invented companion to be worth paying attention to. 3I Atlas came from somewhere we haven't named yet, and it's already leaving. Whatever answers we get about it will come from the data being gathered right now, not from a claim with no traceable source. If new evidence changes that picture, it will come from an observatory, a paper, a named team, not from a script recycled across 100 nearly identical uploads. If you want to keep following what the actual observations turn up as 3I Atlas continues its path out of the solar system, that's the story worth watching. Let us know in the comments what you think deserves closer scrutiny next, the object itself, or the claims that keep attaching themselves to it.